ready for this? Oh.
Like it like that. Hey yo, listen.
Drop it low to the flow. Oh.
Like it like that.
Yeah. Oh. Are you ready for this?
All right, let's dive in. We're taking a deep dive today, looking at some really interesting stuff you sent over about AI.
Okay.
Specifically, how these AI models are actually trained.
Right.
And, all the legal and ethical questions that are swirling around all that.
Yeah, it's a hot topic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Very much so.
I mean, lawsuits everywhere.
Yeah.
And the future of AI is kind of up in the air.
Absolutely.
So we're going to focus in on two big players that you asked about, DeepSeek and ChatGPT. And you want to know, did they use copyrighted material? Like, is that part of their training data without permission?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, are they stealing content, essentially, to build these models?
To get to the bottom of this, we decided to, we asked them. We went right to the source.
Right to the source.
So we posed the same questions to both DeepSeek and ChatGPT.
Right.
First, we asked DeepSeek, did you use any of OpenAI's stuff? Their intellectual property in your training. And then we flipped it around. We asked ChatGPT, did OpenAI use anything that was protected?
Okay.
Any protected content to train GPT?
So before we jump into their answers,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that DeepSeek is, they're relatively new to the game
Right.
compared to OpenAI.
Yeah.
But they're making some big moves.
They are. I mean,
Yeah.
they have this new language model.
Right, exactly.
Which is being seen as a direct competitor to ChatGPT.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to position themselves as the alternative.
Yeah, they're not shying away from that rivalry.
No, not at all.
All right, so let's start with DeepSeek's response.
Okay.
They were very quick to emphasize their commitment to, all the legal stuff.
Okay.
Using data that's legally obtained.
Mm-hmm.
They actually went so far as to say that all of their training data is ethically sourced.
Wow. Strong statement.
It is, right. And they also said that being inspired by research, published research,
Yeah.
that's not the same as actually,
Ripping it off.
stealing it.
Yeah.
Infringing on it.
Interesting. So they're drawing a line there
Yeah.
between inspiration and actually using the code or the data itself.
Yeah, and this is where it gets kind of interesting.
Okay.
They talked about overlapping public data sets.
Yeah.
They're basically saying, look, just because we might use some of the same public data that OpenAI uses doesn't mean we're using their proprietary info.
Right.
But then they were very clear
Okay.
to deny using any outputs from OpenAI models in their training.
Which would be a big no-no, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah, that would be like a direct violation of OpenAI's terms of service.
Right.
All right, so let's switch gears, talk about ChatGPT's answers.
Okay.
They're similar,
Interesting.
but there are some subtle differences.
Okay.
They admit to being trained on publicly available data, but they're really vague about the specifics.
Okay.
Like, which data sets? Where did you get this stuff? They don't really say.
Interesting.
And then they do this thing where they suggest checking for the latest legal updates, which I thought was interesting.
Like they're trying to cover their bases.
Maybe it kind of highlights how fast things are changing in this whole legal landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. It's constantly evolving.
And this brings up, I think, a really important point that you highlighted in your notes. Just because something is publicly available doesn't mean it's free to use.
Especially for commercial purposes, right?
Exactly.
Like training a massive language model.
Copyright laws, they still apply.
Yeah, that's where it gets messy.
That's where it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
And this is where the idea of fair use comes in.
Right. Fair use.
I'm curious, how does that even apply to something as complex as a large language model?
Well, fair use, it allows you to use a little bit of copyrighted material.
Right.
Like if you're writing a review or a parody,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to AA, it's not so clear cut.
Right.
It's a huge gray area.
Yeah, because imagine if an AI model is trained on, I don't know, tons of novels. Is it just learning from them?
Right.
Or is it actually infringing on the author's rights?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Is it transformative enough to be considered fair use?
Yeah, because it's not directly copying.
Right, but it is learning from it.
Yeah.
And using that to create something new.
Okay, so that is the heart of the legal battle that's brewing around OpenAI right now.
Tell me more about that.
They're facing multiple lawsuits.
Oh, wow.
One of them is from the New York Times, and they are alleging that OpenAI used their articles,
Oh, interesting.
copyrighted articles, to train their models.
Without permission, I'm assuming.
Without permission.
Yeah.
And it's not just the New York Times. Some big-name authors have joined the fight, too.
Like who?
George R.R. Martin,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sarah Silverman.
Really?
They're claiming their work was used without their consent as well.
So this is getting serious.
It is. This is getting
Oh.
really serious.
Yeah. These lawsuits could have a huge impact on the entire AI industry. Absolutely. I mean, if the courts decide that using this copyrighted material, even if it's public, is infringement,
Right.
that could change everything.
Yeah, and it feels like OpenAI is kind of walking a tightrope here.
Yeah.
But what's their defense? Are they just crossing their fingers and hoping for the best?
Well, they're definitely not backing down.
Okay.
They're saying that what they're doing is totally within the bounds of fair use.
Okay.
They're arguing that, look, training AI on this publicly available data, it's essential for progress.
Okay, so they're acknowledging that they need a lot of data
Tons of it.
to train these models.
Right.
But how are they addressing these copyright concerns?
Well, they're trying to get ahead of it
Okay.
by actually licensing content.
Okay.
They've already made deals with the Associated Press,
Oh, wow.
Axel Springer, those kinds of folks.
So they're trying to find that balance.
Yeah, between pushing AI forward and respecting those copyright laws.
Yeah. It seems like this legal battle is just the beginning.
It's the tip of the iceberg, really.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on the ethical considerations yet.
Right, and those are just as complex
Oh, yeah.
and potentially even more impactful.
That's a great point. Let's dive into those ethical considerations in the next part of our deep dive. This is already a really fascinating discussion
It is.
with some really big implications for the future of AI.
Absolutely.
So we'll pick this up next time.
Sounds good.
So we were just talking about licensing deals and, how they play into all this.
Right.
But you also flagged some articles about the ethics of it all.
Yeah.
So let's say, even if it's legal, is it right?
That's the big question, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, that's what a lot of folks are grappling with.
Yeah.
Even if a court says, yep, fair use, you're good,
Mm-hmm.
there's still that question of
Yeah.
how does this affect creators?
Right. Because if companies are just scraping the web for all this content, using it to train these models without, paying the people who created it,
Right.
isn't that a problem?
It's a huge concern.
Yeah.
I mean, authors, artists, journalists, musicians,
Yeah.
they all rely on getting paid for their work.
Right.
So if their stuff is just being used for free
Yeah.
to train these models, that might even replace them someday. Yeah.
That raises a lot of questions.
It does, and you brought up a good point in your notes
Yeah.
about the impact on musicians, for example.
Yeah, especially those who rely on, royalties and stuff.
Exactly. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
An AI can be trained on thousands of songs,
Right.
and then it can spit out new music.
Yeah.
That sounds just like the originals. What
Yeah.
happens to those musicians?
Right. They lose out.
They potentially lose out on royalties,
Yeah.
opportunities to create new stuff.
So it's bigger than just copyright.
Right. It's
Yeah.
about livelihoods.
Yeah.
It's about the people whose creativity
Yeah.
is fueling these AI models.
Yeah. And that's where this idea of creator compensation comes in.
Right. Exactly.
How does that work? I mean, in the context of AI training.
Well, there are a lot of ideas floating around.
Yeah.
One is this micropayment system
Okay.
where creators would get a tiny fee
Okay.
every time their work is used.
So every time the AI accesses it?
Right, exactly. And it could be fractions of a cent.
Okay.
But when you think about the scale,
Yeah.
the massive amount of data,
Right.
it could really add up.
It could be significant.
Yeah, and that way, creators are getting compensated.
Mm-hmm.
And the AI companies can keep developing their models.
It's a win-win.
Potentially, yeah.
Are there other ideas out there? Other models?
Yeah. People are talking about collective licensing agreements
Okay.
where creators kind of pool their rights
Okay.
and then negotiate as a group.
Interesting. So there's room for innovation here.
Definitely, it's a whole new frontier.
So let's say I'm a musician or a writer,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want my stuff used. What can I do right now?
Some companies, like OpenAI and Google,
Okay.
they have these opt-out mechanisms.
Okay.
You can use things like robots.txt
Yeah.
or fill out a form.
So you can basically say, hey, hands off my stuff.
Exactly.
Next guy.
But it seems kind of reactive.
It's like closing the barn door
Yeah.
after the horse is bolted.
Right. Is there something more proactive?
Well, Ideally, we'd have a system
Oh,
where creators have more control from the get-go.
okay.
Instead of just saying no,
Mm-hmm.
they could actively participate.
So, like, set their own terms.
Exactly.
Grant licenses, get paid. It's
Exactly.
almost like we need a new kind of licensing agreement.
Yeah, something specifically designed for AI.
Tailored to this whole thing.
Right.
It would be a big change.
It would require a whole new mindset.
Yeah.
Instead of just grabbing data, you'd be treating it as a valuable asset.
Right. Something that needs to be,
Respect.
paid for.
Yeah.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second.
All these lawsuits, all these ethical discussions,
Yeah.
they're really making us think about the big picture.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
what does it mean to create?
Yeah.
To own something?
Yeah.
To share it?
Especially in a world where AI can just generate all this new stuff.
Right, it's blurring the lines.
So here's a big question.
Okay.
If these lawsuits lead to stricter rules about copyright, or if they limit the data that's available for training,
Yeah.
could that actually slow down AI development?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah,
Restricting access to data could definitely have an impact.
right.
But I don't think it has to be a zero-sum game.
Okay, that's a good point. I mean, there are a lot of people thinking about this,
Yeah.
trying to find solutions.
Exactly, and that's encouraging.
What about OpenAI? What do they think about all this?
Well, they've said that they need to be more transparent
Okay,
and that they want to collaborate with creators.
so they're at least aware of the concerns.
Yeah, they're not ignoring it.
And you said they're already doing some licensing deals.
They are, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
It shows that they're willing to work within the system.
Do you think we'll see more of that, more of those types of deals?
I think it's very likely
Okay.
as this whole legal and ethical landscape keeps changing.
Yeah.
We'll probably see more partnerships between AI companies and creators.
I'm also curious about the role of creators. Like, what can they do to shape all this?
I think they have a huge role to play.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are directly impacted.
Right.
Their voices need to be heard.
Yeah.
They can advocate for their rights, talk to policymakers,
Work on the regulations.
Exactly. It's not just about sitting back and waiting.
Right. Be proactive.
Exactly.
Make sure that their work is protected.
Right. And that they're valued.
This has been really insightful.
It has, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's clear that this is a super complex issue
Yeah.
with a lot at stake.
Absolutely.
But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to remember that there's still a lot of potential for positive outcomes.
There is, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, by acknowledging the challenges,
Yeah.
exploring new ideas,
Right.
collaborating.
You can make AI a force for good.
Yeah.
Something that benefits everyone.
Well said.
Thanks.
And I'm curious to hear what you think about where all this might lead us.
Yeah, me too.
But before we get into that, I think it's time to address that big question that you posed at the beginning.
Right, the big one.
So you wanted to know, did DeepSeek and ChatGPT use copyrighted material without permission?
Right.
Like to train their models, right?
Yeah, that was my big concern.
And what we found is
Okay.
it's not a simple answer.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
It really shows how AI is like
Mhm.
pushing the limits of everything we know.
Right. All the rules.
The laws, the ethical frameworks.
Yeah, it's like
we're making it up as we go along.
right, it's new territory.
Brand new.
And so much of this legal battle, it all comes down to
Fair use?
right, fair use.
Which is a gray area.
Super gray.
Very gray.
And these lawsuits against OpenAI,
Mm-hmm.
they're really interesting.
Yeah, they are.
Because they're forcing us to
To really define what fair use means.
yeah, where's the line?
Exactly. And whatever the courts decide,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to have huge implications.
For the whole AI industry.
For everyone. Yeah.
It's kind of like we're at this crossroads, right?
Yeah, it feels that way.
One path leads to, stricter rules.
More regulations.
Yeah, which could slow things down.
It could, yeah.
But the other path is this collaborative approach.
Right, working together.
Yeah, AI companies and creators.
Finding a way to make it work for everyone.
And that brings us back to this idea of a paradigm shift.
Right, changing how we think about data.
Yeah, instead of seeing it as something to be mined,
Mhm.
exploited.
Taken.
Yeah, what if we saw it as a valuable asset?
Right, something that deserves to be protected, respected.
Compensated.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned earlier this idea of a content marketplace.
A marketplace for AI training data.
Oh, what would that look like?
Well, imagine a platform
Okay.
where creators can upload their stuff
Okay.
and set their own terms.
So how it can be used?
Exactly. They could grant licenses, set royalty rates,
Okay.
even collaborate directly with AI developers.
Wow, so they'd have a lot more control.
Way more control.
What's in it for the AI companies, though?
Well, they'd get access to, like, really high-quality data,
Okay.
stuff that's specifically designed for training.
Right. Curated.
Exactly. And it would reduce their legal risks.
Okay, so less scraping.
Yeah, less scraping, less uncertainty,
It'd be more ethical.
more ethical, more transparent,
So win-win.
potentially, yeah.
Any downsides?
Well, we'd have to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that it's accessible to everyone.
Right, not just the big players.
Exactly. We don't want to create a system
Mm.
where only the wealthy or the well-connected benefit.
It needs to be fair.
Absolutely.
And we'd also need to prevent, fraud.
Right. Make sure creators are actually getting paid.
Make sure it's all legit.
Exactly.
Lots of details to work out.
Definitely.
But the concept is really interesting.
It is. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, because the old ways, they just don't work.
They're not built for this.
Right, the traditional approaches.
They're not equipped to handle AI.
So as AI keeps advancing,
Mm.
do you think this kind of collaborative approach,
Yeah.
it's going to become more common?
I think it has to.
Yeah.
As AI becomes more integrated into our lives,
Mm-hmm.
the need for ethical data practices,
Yeah.
it's only going to get stronger.
Well, we've covered a lot today.
We have, haven't we?
From the lawsuits to the ethics.
Yeah.
We even peeked into the future a little bit.
Tried to, at least.
If there's one thing I hope you take away from all this,
Mm-hmm.
it's that AI, it's not just a tech issue.
It's bigger than that.
It's a societal issue.
Absolutely.
Something that affects all of us.
And we all need to be part of the conversation.
I like that. We all need to be part of the conversation.
We do.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course, it's been a pleasure.
Hope you found it informative,
Yeah, me too.
thought-provoking.
Definitely.
And remember,
Mm-hmm.
the future of AI, it's in our hands.
Let's shape it wisely.
Well said.
Are you ready for this? Oh,
Like it like that. Hey yo, listen.
drop it low to the flow. Oh,
Like it like that.
yeah.